Thank you very much, Dame Siobhan. I hereby move the motion that this House should consider the taxation of furnished holiday lettings. Dame Siobhan, it's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair, and I welcome the Minister and other colleagues to their respective places. This debate arises due to the changes announced in the budget to the taxation of the furnished holiday letting regime, I will use the words FHL from now on, which have already acquired the staycation tax nom de plume. As I mentioned in my speech in the budget debate on 12 March, I am concerned that this proposal could have unintended consequences. I acknowledge the thinking behind the change, as there are areas of the country where local people are having great difficulty in renting local properties, and it is possible, I'll put it no stronger than that holiday lettings might be contributing towards this. However, there are other areas across the UK where they are not having such a negative impact, and they are a vital component part of those local economies all around our four nations. This is indeed the case in the Waveney constituency that I represent, though I acknowledge, and this may be where we have the difficulties, that nearby in Southwold, in the constituency of my right honourable friend, the member for Suffolk Coastal, there are significant challenges for local people looking to rent a home.
The Honourable Member give way on that point.
I'll give way.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way on that point. It's a very good point for North Norfolk specifically, where there are clearly problems with local supply of housing. And I put it to my Honourable Member that in an area such as mine with a high degree of second homes, this change in the policy may well just lead to more homes coming onto the market, and they will be snapped up and bought by people who are just buying them as second homes, making it even worse in picturesque places like North Norfolk.
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention. He may well have read my speech, because that is one of the issues that I will highlight, and I will specifically mention some statistics that have been kindly provided to me by the Professional Association of Self-Caterers to make that point. I will give way to my honourable friend, honourable member.
Gentlemen, for bringing this forward, and I suspect that I might add a little bit of controversy or different opinion into the debate, but we'll see how that goes. As a representative of what I believe to be the most beautiful constituency in the United Kingdom, Strangford, it is my desire to attract more bed nights to the area, and the Airbnb type scenario is one way in which we felt this could be done. So does the honourable member not agree that the removal of this tax incentive may prohibit people taking that step to do up the old granny flat in the garden and prevent the local economy from benefiting from bed nights? I see benefits for it, and I think we get it done to our advantage. Just a thought.
I thank the honourable gentleman for that intervention. In certain parts of the country, there might quite well be benefits from this. The point I would argue is that it's a rather blunt instrument which could have unintended consequences in other areas. I will give way to the honourable gentleman there, and then my honourable friend there.
I understand the concerns about shortage of housing. I have it in my own constituency as well. The answer to shortage of housing, however, is to build more houses. It's not to punish what is a very important part of the local economy, also in parts of the country like mine. The advantage of tax provisions like this is that it does allow the improvement and the professionalism to be brought into this sector, which can only improve the visitor offering at the end of the day.
I thank the honourable gentleman for that intervention. I would agree with him on both counts, and actually there are other measures that are being introduced, such as the register, that actually I believe will help bring professionalism into the sector. Actually, from the constituents I've spoken to, from the businesses I know who operate this type of the furnished holiday accommodation, they are incredibly professional businesses. I'll give way to the honourable friend.
Several owners and operators in East Devon have been in touch with me in my constituency about these changes that are being made, and concern is widespread as a result. Would my honourable friend agree with me that the Minister should hold a public consultation about the changes. I know he might go on to say this in his speech, and also consider a list of exemptions. For example, if a property is not and can't be a permanent residence, for example, on a working farm.
That's a good point.
Again, I would agree with him wholeheartedly on that, and that is going to be some of the points that I'm going to be developing as I make my speech. I will give way one more time at this stage before I have to make some progress.
On the basis of the contributions that have been made, does it not seem obvious that what we need is a proper impact assessment of this reform? We need to look at the impact on the economy, the impact on housing, and the impact on tourism sector, and I'm sure he will come to the expected impact on the gross added value and the impact on jobs.
I agree with that point wholeheartedly. A lot of the points that have been raised, I'm going to raise, and let me now get on to actually back them up with the evidence. Now, Deisha Vaughan, since the budget, I have been contacted by many constituents highlighting their concerns. I'm grateful to them for their feedback, as well as to the Professional Association of Self-Caterers, that's PASC. I'll refer to them in that form later on. The Short-Term Accommodation Association, and also the National Farmers Union for all of their briefings and advice. Dame Siobhan, in some ways, I have a sense of déjà vu, in that this proposal mirrors, in many ways, the proposals that were put forward in the 2012 budget to tax Cornish pasties and static caravans. Yes. My right honourable friend, the Chancellor, in his budget speech, stated that he had concerns that the current tax regime for FHLs is distorting the market and that there are not enough properties available for long-term rental by local people. Therefore, to make the tax system work better for local communities, he is planning to abolish the FHL regime. In the accompanying Red Book, the proposals are described as having the advantages of tax simplification, creating a level playing field, and supporting people to live in their own areas. I do have concerns, and I hope I can illustrate why I have those concerns, that these proposals will not fulfil these objectives. The Office for Budget Responsibility have calculated that this measure, along with the abolition of the multiple dwelling relief, will raise an extra £0.6 billion of additional receipts by 2028-29. This figure pales into insignificance compared with the potential loss of value-added and local jobs, which I shall outline shortly. I will give way.
I'm very grateful, Honourable Member, for giving way and for raising and securing this debate. In response from the Chancellor that I had from last week on this very issue, he talks about housing and the distortion for local people, but there's no evidence that if these houses went on sale, that they would become affordable houses by any manner of means at all. And just to echo the points made from the members from Orkney and Shetland, it's many years since the housing charity Shelter told me that there was more second homes in Norway than there were in Scotland. But again, to echo the point, there were more first homes in Norway as well than there were in Scotland. And the point is, let's have more first homes, but let's not be damaging what we have in a very weak economy in many of Scotland's islands by doing this.
I thank the honourable gentleman for that point, and he makes that point particularly well, and hopefully it will come out as I move forward as well. Dame Siobhan, in the first instance, it's necessary for me to set out what I would describe as a few home truths and setting the record straight. My first one is that it's important to point out that the FHL regime is not a tax loophole. It was introduced in 1984 to specifically cater for the fact that a holiday let business is very different from a private rental business. 40 years on, this still remains the case, and it should be pointed out that strict criteria are in place if people wish to move into the regime. My second point is that it should be emphasised that furnished holiday lettings are a long-standing economic lifeline for many coastal and rural areas. I will give way.
Thank you very much. I thank the honourable member for giving way, and he's making a lot of very good points, and specifically about the lifeline for areas. I was recently visited by the Furnished Holiday Lets Association in Scotland, who feel they've been hit by a double whammy, because they've been hit by this legislation, but also the short-term legislation in licensing, legislation in Scotland. Should there not have been a joined-up approach? Would it not have been better for the government to speak to the devolved administration and find a way forward for the whole industry, rather than hamper one of Scotland's biggest and most profitable sectors?
I thank the Honourable Lady for that intervention, and I think she's hit on the way forward. The solution to this problem, if indeed there is a problem, needs to be sorted out locally, consulting in Scotland, in Wales, in Northern Ireland, with the devolved assemblies, and in the UK with local authorities. I give way to the Honourable.
He's been very generous in his interventions, and I thank him. In April last year, the Welsh Government increased up to 182 days a year the occupancy threshold, which allows holiday lets to qualify for business rates. They've also allowed local authorities to increase council tax premiums in cases where that threshold isn't met, up to 300%. So does my honourable friend agree with me that this Welsh Government policy is destroying legitimate business among holiday let operations and damaging the local economy?
I thank the honourable friend for that intervention. I do agree with him, and I think it does illustrate that this is a multifaceted problem or issue, and then it needs a whole host of different organisations to sit round the table and come up with solutions which are bespoke and right for their councils, or for their counties, or indeed for their devolved nations as well.
He's absolutely bang on, and what he's essentially saying is one size does not fit all, and let's find the right solution for every place, because this is a very blunt instrument, and I think he said that.
I thank the honourable gentleman for that further observation intervention, and he is right. My second point, Dame Siobhan, as I was saying, is that it should be emphasised that furnished holiday lets are a long-standing economic lifeline for many coastal and rural areas. The regime supports micro and small businesses that are the cornerstone of many visitor economies. Although abolishing it would hurt those businesses, which include farmers who have diversified into tourism, as well as other businesses, such as pubs, which rely on them for trade. PASC estimate that even a modest 20% reduction in furnished holiday lets could result in the loss of £1.9 billion GVA and 46,000 jobs. The former figure is considerably higher than the OBR's assessment of the additional tax that will be generated. My third point is that furnished holiday lets are not the cause of the housing crisis, as I think colleagues have mentioned. PASC estimate that there is a total of 197,000 properties in the UK which fall within the FHL regime. Due to planning restrictions, 39% of these holiday let properties can only be used for holiday purposes. This means that 76,000 furnished holiday lets could not be used as residential dwellings, and only 121,000 furnished holiday lets have planning permission to be used as residential dwellings. It is important to put into context that these 121,000 dwellings without planning restrictions, which have been they've been established not in the last 3 or 4 years, they've been established over many decades, but they do represent 0.4% of the 30.1 million total UK housing stock, and just 40% of the annual house building target of 300,000 new homes. Whilst there might be anecdotal evidence to suggest that private rental landlords are moving into the short-term let sector, PASC can find no quantitative data to support this conclusion. Indeed, less than 2% of the traditional short-term let businesses had previously rented their properties out as a long-term let. I will give way.
Is it not also clear that following the renters' reform legislation, there has been a hemorrhaging of landlords who do not wish to be in the private rented sector? As a consequence, they used to go to holiday lets. So holiday let individuals are hardly going to be going back to the private renting sector, which they wanted to leave and are leaving in droves.
My honourable friend makes a very good point that reinforces the unintended consequences of this proposal. My fourth point, Dame Siobhan, is that there is no statistical evidence to suggest that furnished holiday lets have a disproportionate impact on house prices. As part of the consultation on the proposed introduction of the new planning use class for short-term lets in England, the Great British Holiday Campaign commissioned an economic impact study by Frontier Economics on the size, growth and economic importance of traditional holiday lets in rural and coastal communities, unfortunately just in England. But I'm sure that it is equally relevant in Scotland and Wales as well. Frontier found that there is no relationship between popular holiday let areas and the growth rate of real house prices over the 2015 to 2022 period. My final home truth, Dame Siobhan, is that there would be, as we've heard, unintended consequences of a change to this taxation regime.
And just another aspect that's occurred to me listening to him, and one that I know personally, is that sometimes when extended family or community come back home to an island, they often use these holiday lets, be they come returning us in the last year, and give you examples from New Zealand or Canada or even mainland Scotland coming back to islands, have used these very properties, which have another community health aspect to them over and above the money they're raising in the economy.
I thank the little gentleman for that intervention. He is, of course, correct. The unintended consequence of this taxation regime is that there would be thousands of job losses, a proliferation of empty properties which for planning reasons could not be used for long-term lets, and a loss of billions of pounds to coastal and rural areas. According to PASC, of their members whose businesses would become non-viable and they would have to sell, 39% believe that the most likely buyer would be a second homeowner, 37% that the property would be bought by another holiday operator, and 16% that the purchaser would come from outside the area. In short, Dame Siobhan, the policy would provide very limited assistance to the very group that it is seeking to support, those local people looking to rent a local home. Dame Siobhan, I'll move quickly through now, and I won't take any more interventions, so we'll give the Minister an opportunity to respond. But in short, I have 9 questions for him as I reach towards conclusion. Yes. What is the Treasury's evidence to suggest that abolishing the holiday letting regime will encourage a significant number of businesses to convert the furnished holiday lets to the private rental sector, so as to justify the harm that it will cause to tens of thousands of small and micro businesses? Secondly, given the significant number of businesses who have expressed concerns, why was there no consultation prior to the proposal? And due to the subsequent concern, will the Treasury now commit to a full public consultation? Number 3, has the Treasury considered the potential unintended consequences of abolishing the FHL regime, including the risk that it will lead to more empty second homes in rural and coastal areas? 4, if the abolition of the FHL regime results in the reduction of furnished holiday lets, what evidence does the Treasury have to suggest that this vital bedstock of many rural and coastal economies will be sustained by other visitor accommodation? 5. Will the Treasury consider the recommendations of the Institute of Fiscal Studies and reverse the mortgage interest relief restrictions which have stifled the supply of the homes that renters desperately need? 6. Why does the Treasury consider that a bespoke, tailor-designed scheme for holiday lets that has operated successfully for 40 years should now be abolished if there is scant evidence to suggest that different tax regimes have resulted in private rental landlords switching to furnished holiday lets? 7. Will the Treasury ensure that the abolition of the FHL regime will not result in a group of people who are essentially entrepreneurs from being retrospectively taxed at a rate that is 4% higher than the top rate of capital gains tax that applies to a passive investor of listed shares? 8. Does the Treasury consider the 5,000 new furnished holiday let properties in the UK, which PASC estimate have been created annually since 2016, that's 40,000 properties, has had a significant impact on the current housing crisis when compared with the 30.1 million homes in the UK, 1.5 million empty or vacant homes, and the commitment to build 300,000 new homes each year? And finally, Dame Siobhan, will the Treasury align the VAT treatment of holiday lets to the same as long-term lets if the policy intention is to align the tax treatment between furnished holiday lets and private rental sectors, or will actively managed FHLs now face a more punitive tax regime than a passive private rental investor? In conclusion, this proposal does not create a level playing field. If it is to be equitable, it will be necessary to complicate the tax system, not simplify it, and it will have a very marginal impact, if any, in enabling local people to rent homes in their local areas. The industry is asking that the Treasury undertakes a full public consultation of any legislation. Personally, I conclude that they are being remarkably polite, and I cannot see a case for changing the current regime. There should be, Dame Siobhan, no future finance bill to legislate for these changes, and like the proposed taxes on Cornish pasties and static caravans, the proposals should be shelved. Instead, a consultation should take place so that a more targeted, localised approach, as opposed to this rather blunt instrument, can be worked up by government, the devolved assemblies and local governments. This way, more focused and localised solutions can be put in place where they are needed, so as to ensure that more properties are indeed available for long-term rental by local people. Thank you for bearing with me, Dame Siobhan.
Order, order. Peter, the question is...